Pavlo and I'm working as a director of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv, Ukraine. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The inscription taken from the Psalm 46, which you can see in front of your eyes, is found in the apside of Saint Sophia Cathedral of Kyiv. There is an amazing polyvalence of the symbol, which has been pointed out by Sergii. Who is this her? Is it the Theotokos? Is it the church? Is it the city of Kiev and its cathedral? Is it the people? For the Ukrainians of today, the image of the Virgin Oranta, the praying Virgin, stands as Moses. Moses that is raising his hands to heaven in the battle of Israel against the Amalekites. And so it was when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And today our churches are raising their hands and asking for peace. The war in Ukraine is an unprecedented tragedy in recent history of our country and of the entire world. It is a challenge to our government, to the military, to diplomacy, to medical services and charities. It is a huge challenge to the churches who try to help, to encourage, to assist the refugees and those who suffer, who are burying those who have been killed. The task number one our churches have is to remain Christian, to love and to bless, all by supporting Ukrainian people in its legitimate defense. And today we want to make the voice of the churches heard. We wanted to be as representative as possible, having leaders from both Orthodox jurisdictions in Ukraine to Protestant denominations, both rights of the Catholic Church. And I'm incredibly grateful to our speakers for having accepted our invitation at such a short notice. Many of them are themselves refugees. I'm grateful to our partners, to the Center Libertas, to International Federation of Catholic Universities, to Lord Dorian, and to all of those who have helped us to spread the word about this event. I would like also to thank the people who joined us. We have now 600 participants registered from various churches, ecumenical organizations, religious charities. I know that many of you have been instrumental in issuing statements in support of Ukraine, in providing humanitarian aid to our country, in approaching your governments with requests to stop the aggression, with prayers. And our people is very grateful for that. I'm passing the word to Father Roman Fihas, who will moderate this session. And Romane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pavlo. My name is Roman Fihas, and I also work at the Institute of Ecumenical Studies with Pavlo. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Today we will have speakers which work in academic area here in Ukraine and come from different Christian denominations. They are Catholics, both Roman Catholics and Greek Catholics, Orthodox of both denominations, Protestants. They follow, or rather stay in the heart of these dramatic and crucial events happening right now in Ukraine, and they are ready to share their reflections and thoughts. Thus, the first speaker is Myroslav Marynovych. He is Vice-Rector of the Ukrainian Catholic University, co-founder of Amnesty International Ukraine, and a founding member of the Ukrainian Helsinki group in Lviv. He spent around 10 years in prison and exile because of his dissident position during the USSR times. He will present some political and ideological roots of the current Russian aggression against Ukraine. Please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, I'm honored to start our discussion, and let me highlight three important elements of ongoing war of Russia against Ukraine in general. First, a short overview of the situation. It turned out that the world overestimated the strength of Russia and underestimated the strength of Ukraine. The world trusted Putin when he boasted that his tanks would reach Kiev in 2 hours. Today marks the 9th day, and Kiev has not yet surrendered. It doesn't mean, however, that we neglect the danger. Realizing that ground operations do not bring him success, Putin gives orders for rocket attacks, which kill mostly civilians and children. Moreover, today the nuclear station in Zaporizhzhia was damaged by a rocket. Unfortunately, the West sees how Ukrainian cities are turning into ruins, but is afraid to anger Putin by closing the sky of Ukraine. Today, it was a shock for many Ukrainians to hear the decision of NATO not to close the Ukrainian sky. We are afraid that we will experience the real humanitarian crisis. However, we do not lose our optimism. The reason is simple and is based on faith. Putin based his actions on lie, hatred, and violence. All the three elements are the three natures of evil or devil. Ukrainian position is based on truth. There is enormous wave of compassion and solidarity among Ukrainians. And it was not we who started the war. And we are ready to stop it as soon as Russian troops leave the Ukrainian territory. So we are hoping that God is on our side. Violence is obvious, it is a war. Hatred was revealed many times. Putin displayed an almost psychotic hatred of Ukraine and Ukrainians. So let me reflect on lie a bit more. We are Christians, and one of the cornerstones of our Christian life is truth. We may be faithful to our mission only if we are faithful to truth. It is exactly what is under the attack of Russia. The Kremlin has launched a powerful information war against our country across the globe. Russia is distorting our desire for independence and the nature of democratic processes in Ukraine. The fascist clique, nationalists seizing power, and understate are just a few examples of the cliches which the Kremlin uses to disorient the world community. The world has employed its latest crafty inventions, such as little green men, and they are not there. The Kremlin gathered massive military troops near the Ukrainian border a few weeks ago, blaming Ukraine and NATO for threatening Russia. And finally, Putin started the war, justifying it with the need to denazify Ukraine. Lies, lies, endless lies. By these lies, the Putin regime seeks to elude responsibility. And we Christians know the biblical metaphor of it. Putin becomes like the mockingbirds of Isaiah, who, I quote, made lies their refuge, and in falsehood have they taken shelter. Isaiah 28:15. The second point is how to solve the problem. The world has lost 8 years trying to cajole the aggressor. All the sanctions were aimed to restrain Russia, and Putin just ignored them. It is absolutely obvious that all the previous sanctions were ineffective because they were belated. Why politicians didn't see that? Because there was a precondition that the language of strength would trigger the Third World War. So the dilemma values versus safety was solved in favor of safety. You might object my conclusion about ignoring values. However, let us look to the situation with the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. According to the letter, the US, the UK, and the Russian Federation promised to guarantee the territorial integrity of Ukraine. In reality, Russia has annexed Crimea and occupied a part of Ukrainian territory and now is leading the war. What was the reaction of the other two guarantees? Their official answer shocked me. The Budapest Memorandum was simply a declaration. It was not legally binding. Well, is it moral and fair? The moral failure of the Budapest Memorandum is enormous. Of course, now we Ukrainians feel deep gratitude to those nations, first of all, the United States and the UK, which have clearly expressed their support for Ukraine and made some practical steps in this direction. However, we all see that these steps are partially ineffective because they are belated. So I see a huge trap. Ignoring values brings such disturbances into the life of the world that it is precisely what they want to protect, security, that is under threat. And the latest weeks just confirmed that. We are closer to the World War III, even more than in the year 2014. So it has to be obvious for Christians that the fundamental solution to the security dilemma lies not in the political, but in the value sphere. Any attempts to guarantee security at the expense of values will not produce a lasting effect. Distorted values will give rise to changes in the international order, which will become even more dangerous. This conclusion is confirmed by the famous words by Benjamin Franklin. Those who are ready to give up essential liberty to obtain a temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And finally, let me reflect on the spiritual roots of this war. And I will base my conclusions on my former experience of a prisoner of the Soviet Gulag. I am sure the present world crisis is based on the greatest falsification of the 20th century made after the World War II. The 1945 Yalta Conference led to an immense injustice, a double standard in evaluating the criminal behavior of two totalitarian regimes. The Nazi regime was publicly condemned, while communist crimes were kept hidden for security reasons and were never brought to account, legally or morally. But sooner or later, that clandestine evil had to emerge as the seed for a new world conflict. The demonic evil power at the core of the communist system had to sooner or later metastasize. The world had to reap what it had sown. And the present criminal regime in Russia is the fruit of these seeds. So the 21st century can be successful if it brings all the 20th century accounts to a close and does not allow them to poison our world today. This requires a total catharsis, that is, not only bringing all communist crimes to justice, but also seeing to it that they are atoned for. As George Weigel recently stated, I quote, Putin's Russian regime is a danger to the Russian people and the world, and will likely remain so until the kind of moral and historical reckoning that took place in Germany after World War II takes place in Russia, end quote. The well-known Russian intellectual Yuri Afanasyev was even more resolute, I quote, should such a Russia be saved with the despotism of the authorities, where the individual and the majority of the population have become the object of repression? My answer is no. We need to save, but not that Russia and not this regime. We need to change the paradigm of Russia, end quote. I totally agree with him. And this goal might be achieved only through the moral reckoning of the Russian nation that will lead to its liberation. During this Lent time, I personally will pray for this moral reckoning of the Russian nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your word and for your reflections. Really, when we have a choice between violence and safety, and when we choose on the last one, we will lose both. Right now, we are moving to Sergii Bortnyk, who is a professor at the Theology Academy of Kiev, Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He stays in the town near Kyiv right now, and also could witness about this situation. Also, we are interested to hear the position of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church regarding the war, and what is the reaction of the priests and faithful of the church. And I remind that every speaker will have 3 or 5 minutes to express his reflections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would say, first of all, about the official position of our church, Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Sometimes it is called in connection to the Moscow Patriarchate. And on the first day of the war, there was a statement of our primate, Metropolitan Onufry, and it was strong enough to say that it is a large guilt to start a war and other things. And after several days, there was also a statement of our Holy Synod about the same problem, and also strong enough to accuse the people that started this war. But on the other way, we can remember the words of Vladimir Putin himself. Once or more, he has mentioned our church, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Moscow Patriarchate, and persecutions of our church in Ukraine as a reason for the beginning of this war. And this is a very important problem for our church. And I suppose that the ground for this is that till now, for a short time, the official position of our church was not always clear enough in clear expressions. Officially, we are for the territorial integrity of our state since the very beginning, but I can say we are also, so our priests, our lay people are also guilty that sometimes they were results, they expressed the faith in these imperial ideas of the Russian Federation, of the Putin's regime, as it was said, and it is really a problem, I suppose, for our church. But on the other side, I would say I have seen in different social medias also very many priests of our church have said we are against the war. We expressed the position that this Russian invaders were not welcomed in Ukraine and so on. And yesterday or the day before, there was also there were statements of 15 or even more bishops of our church. And for example, first idea was that they decided not to mention the name of Patriarch Kirill in the commemoration of the liturgy. And for us, it is an important symbol that we would like to short our connection to the center in Moscow, a canonical connection in the church right, not really administrative connection, but in any way, this connection existed till now, and they wanted and want till now to make something different, to change the situation. And it is my hope that our church can find its own way now in this difficult situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sergii. It is really an interesting things happening here in Ukraine. The official position of Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is in canonical union with Moscow Patriarchate, is completely different on the situation in Ukraine, which it is from the position from Russian Orthodox Church. And thank you for your brave position. And we will see how the events will going on. The next speaker is Reverend Petro Balog. He is the director of St. Thomas Aquinas Institute in Kyiv. He is Roman Catholic Benedictine priest who is in the heart of Ukraine, in our capital Kyiv right now. Please tell us what is going on right now in Kyiv, how churches help people to diminish their sufferings.
Thank you. I am Dominican priest, not Benedictine. Greetings to all of you from engulfed in war but full of hope Kyiv. I'm theologian, and usually I write articles, I teach lessons, I participate in the conferences. Now we Dominicans in Kyiv have opportunity to put the theology on practice. As you know, on February 24 this year, Russian President Putin ordered the capture of Ukraine. a massive attack began on all sides, from Belarus, from the north, from the east, from the south, from the Crimea. And Ukraine is now, in fact, in the ring of Russian troops. Missile and airstrikes began on Ukrainian military facilities, and at the same time, ground and tank troops began to attack the main cities of Ukraine, including Chernihiv, Kharkiv, especially Kharkiv, Kherson, Mykolaiv, and many others, but above all, the capital, Kyiv. We Dominicans have the priory of the Mother of God in Kiev. Also, we have the Institute of St. Thomas Aquinas. This institute has been working at the priory since 1992, 30 years this year, as is the Kairos Publishing House. Now, due to the difficult situation caused by the war, and shots and explosions are heard in the streets, our mission is under threat. All the time we receive many letters and messages expressing solidarity and concern. I have no time to respond to all. And also we receive assurances about prayer. It's very nice. We thank everyone for them very much, and they are very important to us. These days we have received in our priory a number of people who are afraid to stay at home and came to us for shelter and security. We serve the Holy Mass together. We pray the Rosary. We eat together. And when there is a siren, we go down to the basement to hide from a possible air attack. We also help the needy people in the city. Every day I receive calls from these people. And we have a lot of information about it, and we participate in volunteering. Very important that, fortunately, the Ukrainian army and volunteers are courageously defending cities, especially the capital, from enemy aggression. So now Kyiv, yes, under threat, but every day we can hear this missile and air attack, but we can walk on the streets and so on. However, we are constantly under threat because war is always evil and misery. Nevertheless, we believe that we will endure this unequal struggle. We constantly pray for it. External assistance, extreme assistance, which is essential for us, is also very important. Our institute and our publishing house here in Kyiv completely depend from renting our premises for offices and for private kindergarten. Now all this is not working, and it is unknown when everything will return again. Therefore, without a doubt, we now need serious support. I am the prior of the priory of the Dominican Brothers in Kiev. I'm also the director of the Institute of St. Thomas Aquinas, and as well, director of the publishing department, Kairos. And that is why I'm worried about all these institutions and think about their future, which unfortunately is uncertain. I speak about my institutions, but it is problem of all Ukraine, all Ukrainians. In Kyiv, we have working only some shops with products. And we would like these Dominican initiatives to cease. We would not like this Dominican initiative to cease exist, as a result of Russian aggression. And the war will end someday, I hope, but its aftermath will not over so quick. We try to continue our main mission here in Kiev, namely education, publishing, pastoral, ecumenical. So I sent to our Dominican institutions around the world our request for help and support during this difficult time for us. In my letter, I asked about help for the Institute St. Thomas, for the publishing house, and for our Dominican community. So the situation is difficult, but not without hope. We all have hope, and now our nation, Ukrainians, are united as never before. It's merciful something. Day before war, we was divided and politically and so on. Now we are united like one strong nation because we have this enemy. He made invasion of our country. So I would like to end. May the all-merciful Lord grant us His grace, support, strength, spirit, victory over the enemy who came to enslave us, and peace to all of us in our hearts and trust in Him, and to our benefactors as well, His generous blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Petro, for your courage, for staying in Kyiv. Together, as you know, that all the leaders of our Ukrainian churches also remained in Kyiv, or Greek Catholics, Orthodox leaders. Also, Nuncio stays in Kyiv, and he had a chance to go to another country. Thank you for being there, and we pray for you, and we are together. Our next speaker is Taras Dzyubanskyy. He is the director of the Institute of Religion and Society of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And he also is the head of the Libertas Center for Interreligious Dialogue here in Lviv. Please, Taras, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Father Roman and Pavlo, for organizing this important event. And thanks for the opportunity to share some of my reflections. I'm very honored to speak after the Dominican father, Father Petro, because I received most of my education actually in interfaith dialogue and peace building from the Dominican institution in Rome at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas. So dear friends, Ukraine is in the second week of war and the brutal Russian invasion, but the thirst of the people for spirituality is really uplifting. You know, as the bombs and rockets and missiles are sent on the civilians, on the hospitals, on the schools and kindergartens, you know, prayers are sent to Ukraine all over the world to protect the innocent and to stop the horrific attack. You might be aware that in Ukraine, religion has always been an important part of the Ukrainian identity, and religious services and prayers and vigils are being held in the Ukrainian churches and places of worship. So religion, of course, we believe that has a tremendous power. It gives people strength in the times of crisis, in the times of darkness, and it gives people hope in the times of despair. In these dark times, we've seen the tremendous courage of the Ukrainian people. And I believe that this courage is sustained by firm belief in good, in values, as was mentioned by Myroslav Marynovych, and the values of freedom. And for most Ukrainians, this strength and courage, they come from their commitment to freedom and values and belief in God. Although mostly Ukraine is a Christian country with majority of people belonging to the Orthodox tradition, minority Catholics and Jewish and Muslim populations have shown solidarity, unity, and common yearning for freedom. In the past, my institution, both the Institute for Religion and Society as well as the Libertas Center, we organized various interfaith events and interfaith rehabilitation programs for victims of the war in the east of Ukraine. but also programs for internally displaced people from Crimea, as well as from the Donbas area. And in this current crisis, we see a lot of religious leaders and most religious organizations and churches expressing their disdain and the call to stop the senseless war. Also, we see religious communities and churches coming to the front, feeding, sheltering, and taking care of the thousands of internally displaced people, the poor, and the needy. And of course, the war is not a new reality in Ukraine, unfortunately, because back in 2014, we witnessed the annexation of Crimea, the fighting in the Donbas, and unfortunately, we have become accustomed to the horrific news of deaths and human losses. Most of my work in the academia and in the civil society sector has been centered around dialogue and promoting dialogue. Last year at the Institute and the UKU, we started the Dialogue Fellowship. And of course, now when we have the war, when we have the fighting, a lot of people who took part in our programs in dialogue, they ask us, what has been the impact? Does the word dialogue have still sense? What do we mean by dialogue? Who are we supposed to be dialoguing with? But, to be honest, all of those people who took part in our dialogue trainings and sessions, they are the people who radiate really so much humanity, and there is so much hope that we will get over this. In most of the religious texts of our religious traditions, be it Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, we see that war is one of the worst evils that can happen to humanity. Because the war, it leaves children orphaned, it leaves widows, it leaves horror and destruction. This war is a huge threat to Ukraine, but not only. It's also Europe, the whole world, and the whole architecture of peace, which is under threat. And while the world is waking up slowly, hopefully it will not be too late to stop the aggressor, because as we see, the metastasis of evil will continue to spread. So I really hope and pray that this madness will stop and the skies over Ukraine will be clear and peaceful. And while such hopes are there, of course, the heroic strength and the resilience of Ukrainian soldiers and volunteers, their commitment to protect the sanctity of human life, of course, they are the best examples to illustrate what the evangelical love of neighbor means. It's practical application of values to this situation. So God be with us all.
Thank you, Taras, for your words and for your reflections. We are moving to next speaker, who is Roman Soloviy, Director of the Eastern European Institute of Theology. He has a wide net of friends in Ukraine and in the former Soviet republics, and it would be interesting to hear about the reaction of the Ukrainian and Russian Protestants regarding the Russian war in Ukraine. Please, Roman.
Well, Roman, you touched a very painful issue for many Ukrainian evangelicals. When the war started, some Ukrainian evangelical churches have made a particular statement on the beginning of the war. Some did not. However, I have to say that all Ukrainian evangelical denominations, there are many of them, they all support decisions and statements of the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches, and they all strongly support the territorial integrity and independence of Ukraine. Because during last 30 years, Ukraine was, as we like to say, a spiritual breadbasket for the Europe, especially for evangelical missionary work. And during all those years, Ukrainian evangelicals enjoyed total freedom of religion, of gathering, of developing theological institution, of preaching gospel, of praying, of conducting their normal church life. And therefore, it is very painful for us to see what is happening right now, because we know the sad history of Protestant churches in Russia, even during last 10-15 years. So, as I said, all Ukrainian denominations, Baptist, Pentecostal, charismatic churches, they all strongly support Ukrainian government and Ukrainian independence.
As some of you may know, still until the Maidan and Revolution of Dignity, evangelicals in former Soviet Union held some sort of communication. I wouldn't say unity, but communication, because during Soviet times, we all have belonged to one big union where all Protestant denominations were gathered. So there were still relations. There were hundreds of Ukrainian missionaries, Pentecostal and Baptist in Russia. If you will take a look in the Baptist and Pentecostal unions in Russia, most of their bishops and pastors would be Ukrainians or someone who came from Ukraine. Therefore, it's really painful when we see reaction of Russian evangelical believers to the war in Ukraine. The best what we have is a statement of Russian Baptist Union that calls to peace but does not use the word war, and talks about some strange, complicated situation on Ukrainian borders. But this is the best what we have from official bodies. Today, the head of Pentecostal of Russia openly supported this, as they called, special operation in Ukraine. He says that Sergei Rekhovsky, very famous Russian Pentecostal leader, he said, "We pray that this Russian military operation in Ukraine will be completed by April 24, when Easter will be celebrated in both countries." What kind of Easter we are going to celebrate in the midst of this ocean of suffering and death? He said, well, any Christian of any denomination is against violence, but at the same time, I understand that peace is achieved by different methods, including by force, as in this situation. So it's very sad for us. At the same time, I have to say that there are some activists, and dozens of them, that have the courage in those times when they can go to prison for 5 years just for saying that there is no war in Ukraine, that there is a war in Ukraine. They signed a petition in which they clearly condemn the war in Ukraine and called the Russian government to stop the war and to start peaceful negotiations. But they are small minority of courage, of people of the courage, unfortunately. Most of the Russian believers stay neutral or actively support the war in Ukraine. I also want to say a few words about the ministry of Ukrainian Evangelical Churches in terrible days. You know, Ukrainian Protestants, they are not much people of words, they are more people of works and prayer. And in these days, from east to west, from Donbass to Transcarpathia, hundreds, well, maybe thousands of churches have joined in saving lives. Thousands and thousands of volunteers tirelessly respond to the immediate need with the first wave of refugees and internally displaced persons. They organize daily transport routes, receive people in temporary places of rest, help to cross the border to neighboring countries, feed and clothe their neighbors. The small congregations in Lviv region, Transcarpathian region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Volyn region, Chernivtsi region, in the spirit of fraternal love, receive thousands of refugees every day from different Ukrainian regions. Churches in Lviv, even the church where I am one of the pastors, have housed and provided food for thousands of people. This morning I attended our church and there were dozens of people from Kharkiv, from other places, having temporary shelter in our church facilities. And also these days, we are watching the news of the suffering of our nation with tears and pain of despair. This manifestation of radical, self-sacrificial law gives us hope and strength to continue our work of law. I also have to say about the millions of refugees and displaced persons seeking a safe place abroad. Neighboring countries, Romania, Moldova, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and other European countries have extended a helping hand to us and hospitably receive Ukrainian refugees and provide them with necessary assistance. And evangelical Protestant churches in these countries make the most of all resources to help sufferers find temporary housing, food, transportation, fuel, and others. I also would like to mention that these tragic actions have caused significant damage to Ukrainian Protestant theological education. Leading theological schools were forced to evacuate immediately, leaving their premises, libraries, and some workers and students in the occupied territories, like in Odessa, Kherson, and other places. It is difficult even to predict how and when they will be able to return to their campuses. I would like to conclude with next remark. Last week was emotionally and spiritually too difficult for me as for many Ukrainian Christians. However, the realization is gradually coming that we are only at the beginning of a long and maybe even more brutal war that will bring us much more suffering and death. Therefore, we must learn to live in this new normality condition. We must learn how to continue to serve God in this new situation. We have to find strength for work and ministry, for the future, for the Ukraine, and for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman, for your pain, not only for the suffering to the people, but for misunderstandings by the believers, what is going on here in Ukraine. The same we feel as Catholics, because a lot of diplomatic language from Vatican was said to the Russians, but it doesn't say, it is not really support for us. Our next speaker is Pavlo Shvarts, who is the bishop of the German Evangelical Lutheran Church of Ukraine. He currently moved from Kharkiv. It is one of the hottest points right now of the Russian military aggression and even many crimes against the civil people. And he knows what feel people over there. Please, Bishop, share your thoughts. And if it is a problem for you to speak in English, we can speak in Ukrainian, and afterwards we'll translate into English. Pavlo?
Вітаю. Дякую Павлу Смицнюку, який погодився мене перекладати.
Yes, hello, I'm grateful for the translation that is provided.
Я погоджуюся майже зі всім тим, що було сказано переді мною, тому не буду перераховувати всього сказаного раніше.
I agree with those who spoke before me, so I will not repeat what they have said.
Скажу тільки, що до такої війни, яку ми маємо зараз, напевно, ніхто з нас не був готовий.
I would only say that nobody of us was ready for the war such as we are experiencing today.
Але незважаючи на це, більшість християн і протестантів, в тому числі, показують себе з найкращої сторони.
But nevertheless, I think the majority of Christians, the Protestants included, are showing the best side of themselves.
Особисто я вдячний кожному християнину і кожному протестантові, який служить в цей час своїм ближнім.
I'm personally grateful to every Christian, to every Protestant that in this difficult moment is serving to their neighbors.
Вдячним всім нашим західним, насамперед, християнам, які моляться, допомагають, як тільки можуть, нашій країні.
And I'm very grateful to our foreign, especially Western partners, for their prayers and their support to our country.
Вдячний також тим небагатьом голосам зі Сходу, які хоч щось принаймні говорять або моляться принаймні за нас і не піддаються російській пропаганді.
And I am especially grateful to those in the East who don't play according to Russian propaganda, but pray for us and support us.
І ще так коротко можу додати, що ми, як християни в Україні, багато зараз молимося, звичайно, багато допомагаємо іншим людям і ще будемо це робити.
As Christians, we pray a lot, we help a lot, and will continue to do so.
Але перед нами ще велика праця, насамперед праця з травмою людей, які переживають і пережили нальоти, бомбардування, як це, наприклад, в Харкові.
But I expect that we will have a huge work to do to heal the trauma that people have experienced or still continue to experience under bombardments as it is going right now in Kharkiv.
Я зараз в дорозі повертаюся знову до Харкова для того, щоб завести продукти і ліки, які були зібрані нашими польськими друзями.
I'm now on my way back to Kharkiv to bring the medicaments and food that have been reassembled by our Polish friends. So I'm bringing all this to Kharkiv.
І це не для того, що я хочу стати героєм, а для того, що є люди, які потребують допомоги, і я вважаю, що кожен з нас може щось зробити для цього.
And I don't want to be a hero. I just want to help the people who need that assistance in Kharkiv. And I believe that everybody of us can do something.
В Харкові, в Києві, в Херсоні, в інших місцях є насправді дуже важка ситуація, і де люди потребують нашої допомоги, не тільки молитви, але також такої матеріальної допомоги і психологічного супроводу.
In Kharkiv, in Kyiv, in Kherson, there are many people who need our help, not only our prayers, but also practical, material help.
І я, звичайно, також, як більшість християн, напевно, молимося, щоб Бог зупинив Путіна і російську агресію.
And as other Christians in our country do, we pray to God to stop Putin and his aggression in Ukraine.
Дякую вам за те, що ви слухаєте про Україну, молитеся і підтримуєте її.
Thank you for your time and for the fact that you are listening about Ukraine, supporting Ukraine and praying for us.
Thank you, Bishop Paul, for your courage. And that, right now in Kharkiv is real hell because it's one of the hottest points in Ukraine, and God protects you, and we will pray for you as well. Our next speaker is Father Igor Shaban. He was in his car because he was also leaving Kiev. He lives in Borispil and has his ministry in Borispil, but I don't see him among the participants right now. So let us finish. And Dmytro Gorevoy also is doing his ministry in transferring one family from Kharkiv to Lviv, so he will not participate in our round table. Thus means that we will have time for discussions, and I invite you to raise your hand and ask direct question, or you can write also your questions in the chat window, please. Igor Shaban is right now is connecting, so this Father Igor. Father Igor, I will present him. He is the head of the Commission for Interconfessional and Interreligious Dialogue of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. He fulfilled his ministry in the town nearby Kiev called Borispil. Please tell us, Father, what are the main messages from the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church regarding the war and how the church is engaged in the humanitarian work. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So right now I am on a bridge between the left side and the right side of the Dnipro River. It's only one bridge is working in Kyiv. The Kyiv right now is closed because it's a time of you can move too much. But anyway, a lot of people I know over there, and thank you that you are with us. I think that Professor Marynovych already told very clear what's going on in Ukraine. What I just want to stress, I think that we need the solidarity from the all people around the world, just to push your politicians to help Ukraine, because it's really hard, right? I was in Lviv today in the morning. I started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and right now it's 7 o'clock afternoon. I am only came to the Kiev, so it was not very easy way. And I'm also going as Bishop Shvarts said, because the people need us here. And also we bring some humanitarian help for the soldiers and for our people in Borisov. Of course, we are praying, but I think it's we can do more. We can do more when we ask you to ask your country to help Ukraine, especially to close the sky. I know that I am sorry. I came for some checkpoint. They will check me right now, I think. I
Thank you,
can show
Father
you.
Igor, for your courage that in such time you are coming back to
you
Kiev. Okay, show us what it is right now. It is the one bridge where you can go by car in Kiev.
Yes, it's only
the
one bridge
closed.
you can drive.
Do people, Father Igor, you know the situation in Kiev, do people have problems with food in Kiev, or it's fine, you can find something to eat?
I think yes, because some people ask me to bring a milk and cheese for the children. Also, I bring a bread, because, and especially the ingredients to make a bread, because it's finished in Borisov, I know. So I think the store is still working, but not too much. It is inside of it. Also, the aptekas, 90% are not working, and you have no too much medicine in here. Especially, we need something to stop the blood or blooding when someone is injured. It's a war. It's real war, and we have aggression from Russian Federation, and people are really dying, and Russians really kill them. It's real. I can't imagine it, but it's realistic.
As you know, that there were negotiations between the Ukrainian and Russian government about the humanitarian corridors, because there are some cities which are surrounded by the Russian troops. They wanted to left children and women to leave the cities, but the Russian didn't allow. So we continue to pray for them and for their courage. Thank you. So thank you, Father Igor. And I right now I'm open our discussion panel. Please, Pavlo, you can take your words, take your floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Roman, and thank you to all our speakers. Yes, for their like heartbreaking testimonies. I'm asking. We have now time for questions, so please feel free to raise your hands with the question and or write your question in the chat. Yes,
maybe
Bill, please. Yeah, there is a function with which you can raise your hand, and then it will we can see you easier because there are too many people. So please, Penny, ask a question, unmute yourself, and then Sergii Bortnyk.
Okay, I will have to unmute her. You have to raise your hand, Penny, please.
Penny, we can't hear you. Now, yes, please.
One more time, please.
Penny.
Been to the European village for a gluten-free beer yet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Penny, go on. And Daniel, if you can wait a second, and then we can.
Good.
Well,
Penny.
All right. I'm glad you're there.
Oh, sorry. Not so much a question as a comment. I just think that this is a marvelous opportunity to come together at this meeting, and I'm hoping that there'll be further opportunities, because it's just a feeling of wanting to come closer to you and to other Christians, and to be able to pray together particularly, and to get first-hand records of what's going on. So thank you very much for organising this, and I hope that there'll be similar meetings that we can attend in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. So now I'll give word to Sergii Bortnyk and then Daniel Scarborough. Yes, so Sergii, if I don't know what you are going to say, but if you can also share with us your thoughts about what is going to happen with the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. I think we followed, yes, very closely this divergency in positions between the Russian Orthodox Church in unity with Moscow Patriarchate and with the Patriarch Kirill. So what are you, and the declarations by different presbyteral councils in various dioceses asking to stop commemorating the Patriarch, asking to call for independence of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So what is your take on that, what you are expecting? And unfortunately, we had a representative from the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine who couldn't join us, Dmitry Hoyevoy. So this position is not being made clear, but I think Sergii probably can know both situations well.
So first of all, thank you very much. I'd like to comment first of all. And for me, it was very important. Can you hear me? For me, it was very important that the testimonies of Roman Soloviy and Pavlo Shvarts were also about this problem that the people of the same faith, the Lutherans and the other Protestants in Russia, are also in many ways infiltrated with propaganda of the Russian Federation. So it is not so good to be happy in this case, but it is good that not only Orthodox people, but also Protestants and some others differ from each other on this question, whether they live in Russia or in Ukraine, whether they listen to the Russian sources of information or Ukrainian sources of information. So for me and for our church, this is really a large problem. And it is good that not only for us, but also for other churches. If I answer your question, so first of all, about the position, official position of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. As soon as I know, this position is stable, not only in the last week, so after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, but also before. It is, we can say, statehood positions, державницька позиція, so something like this. So they support Ukrainian state since the very beginning, and now in the situation of war, it is clear they continue to support our state. But it is not really difficult for them to change their own position in the context of the conflict, of the war. And if you speak now about the future of our Church, Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So, of course, I don't know exactly. But I have already said, I have heard from the words of Vladimir Putin about the title of our church, that we are one of the reasons of this war. And that's why I'm not really optimistic about the existence of our church in this form as now. So I think that first of all, there are really many expressive people that will start to destroy parishes of our church. Sometimes there are effects that some priests and their parishes will change their
canonical denomination.
Canonical denomination, so change to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and so on. That's why I have already said our church needs a strong and clearly expressed position. It needed before and it needs now, and I don't know exactly whether our bishops are ready to express their position openly. The problem is that, in my opinion, many bishops and priests and lay people in the Western Ukraine and in the Eastern Ukraine have different opinions. So this Russian culture, Russian language, Russian propaganda are very important. There are many people that believe this propaganda. There are many people that find some really positive aspects in this propaganda. And that's why it is very important for the peace and church peace in Ukraine that we find really good words for this way of reconciliation in Ukraine and against this invasion of Russia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. There will be a couple of questions from the chat to you, Sergii, but maybe I will give a word to Bishop David Hammett and then Anne-Marie Meyer. If you can shortly introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers. I serve the Church of England's diocese in continental Europe, which includes Ukraine, where we have one small community in Kiev. I suppose my question really is following on what Sergii has just spoken about, and many of us in the West are wondering about how likely is it that we might be able to exert ecumenical pressure on the Patriarch of Moscow, and whether, in fact, such a pressure for him to distance himself from the Kremlin's policy and even perhaps to exercise some kind of spiritual chastisement, dare I even say excommunication of Putin, would this help to, would this be influential in helping to change Putin's approach? And how likely are we able to affect that ecumenically? And if there's any metropolitans in Russia itself who are beginning to stand out and take a separate stand that we might be able to strengthen and influence, to grow a movement to influence Moscow?
Yes, thank you very much, Bishop. And I've seen some other people also in the chat have questions of the same sort. John Wallace, Niall Vigers, Luc Forestier. So it's really an important question. Sergii?
So it is really a difficult question. I would say that in the global West, there is another system of relationships between the state and the church. So because of the Reformation period, there is a stable position of churches that can differ from the position of the state. And in the Orthodox tradition, in many countries, not only in Russia, we have this tradition of symphonia, so the symphony between the state and the church. And that's why, so there is example, not only in Russia, but in Romania, for example, in Serbia and so on. Sometimes we can speak the same also in Ukraine, in the connection, for example, of President Poroshenko in his time of presidency and this new Orthodox Church of Ukraine. So there is a tendency by the Orthodox churches as a whole to give to have special partnerships to their own church, and it is the problem of Patriarch Kirill in Moscow. And in his situation, he is responsible for his faithful in Ukraine. But for example, since 2014, we have not heard a positive response to our hope that he will defend us against this invasion in eastern Ukraine or in Crimea. And that's why it is not really to wait. It was not really to wait from him to give his voice for Ukraine in this situation now of the war. So it is difficult, you know. For example, the history of the Russian church, the history of the church in the Russian Empire. There were some examples of people that became martyrs because of their activity against the state, but they are not really usual for the behavior of the state, of the church to the state. So I would say Patriarch Kirill was not able to show that he is the patriarch for faithful for Orthodox people both in Russia and in Ukraine. So that's why it is the consequence of his behavior that many bishops and clergy of our church want now to change this situation, to become free from this pressure of Russian propaganda, from Russian ideas. And I think it is clear, but what is the way for Ukrainian Orthodox is not clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergii. Yes, Professor Anna-Marie Myers.
Thank you for organizing this wonderful event, and my great appreciation to all who have witnessed, given their testimonies right now. I am professor of dogmatic theology at Trier University in Germany, a Roman Catholic, and I have been one of the co-chairs of the joint working group between the World Council of Churches and the Catholic Church, or PCPCU, working on a text, Peace is a Treasure for All. So this is going to be published soon, once the World Council of Churches is going to have its next General Assembly, which is hoped for this year to happen. It should actually already have been out. And in this text, the joint working group is actually trying to enforce the support that churches, and especially the member churches of the WCC and the Roman Catholic Church, can give to people in situations of violence. So my question to you would be, what kind of support, apart from prayer support, of course, which is the most obvious one, and humanitarian support, would you think that, well, our two parent bodies, the Roman Catholic Church and the WCC, I saw that quite a few people from these two organizations are present, could actually give you? So as concretely down to earth as you can do it, like pressurizing politicians, speaking in the UN or whatsoever. I don't know. The Pope already made an effort and went to see the Russian ambassador to the Holy See, but apparently this didn't help much, because in Kharkiv the Episcopal Curia was bombed just a few days afterwards. So yeah, well, but just the question to you, what would you like us from outside to do on your behalf.
Yes, thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for your question. And I think it's a question that troubles a lot of participants here. So maybe Taras Dzyubanskyy, Professor Marynovych can tackle the question. Taras?
Yes, I think the international pressure should be continued, on the Kremlin and on the Patriarch Kirill, because we don't expect Kirill to do what the Pope did, right? But the Pope did a very important move. He went out of all the protocols. This is really unprecedented. We don't expect this from Kirill. But I think what we should be expecting in the coming future, is really the weakening of the orthodoxy in the world. Because, seeing the events, the horrific events in Ukraine, this will definitely have an impact on the orthodoxy and its status. So what should we do? Pray, of course, but also pressure your governments, pressure the Kremlin, pressure the religious authority to speak up. I mean, if Kirill doesn't speak, that's already an answer to a lot of people. So that's something very shortly that I wanted to briefly say.
Yes, thank you. Maybe Professor Marynovych can add. Okay, if not, maybe I can add. I think there are several issues there. Our institute has been working on peace building, and we wrote, we read, Yoder, we read Girard, we know how escalating conflict leads to escalation and possibly to nuclear war. And I think that nobody wants it. At the same time, talking to our colleagues, yes, in Ukraine, to professors, to the military, to everybody, they say we need weapons to protect, from Putin. Helping refugees is very good, but if we don't stop, the cause that causes the refugees to come to Poland, to Europe, it doesn't work. So I think our message is somehow to respect this non-nuclear status of Ukraine and the insurances that have been given to our country, and help us really to stop the aggression with the support to our military, with political support. There is now 1 million refugees, and probably the number will be increasing in Europe. So another practical moment is to help the refugees, to help the humanitarian aid organizations to Ukraine. So I think this would be the first two priorities: pressure governments to help Ukraine. I don't know that we are talking about non-flight zone in Ukraine, yes, and to help our military and to tackle humanitarian crisis. There will be a moment, I think, to help all the institutions, as Father Balog mentioned. Yes, I think all civil society, universities, everybody in Ukraine will need your help. Professor Marynovych, and then we will go back to questions.
Thank you. My suggestion is that Christians in the world may do a lot by targeting, talking to Russian Christians. I understand that probably it doesn't make sense to speak with Patriarch Kirill. He is not a free person, probably, but every contact with simple, poor, with Christians on the ground will be very effective and will produce a cumulative effect, because they live under the strength, the pressure of Russian propaganda. They believe in the reality that is absolutely false. For example, I read the following words by one mother who recognized her son among those who are detained by the Ukrainian army. And she said, I would be happy to come to Ukraine, but I am afraid of Ukrainian Nazi. So she lives in a totally false world. So if you help us to fight with this propaganda, you will do very much for us.
Thank you very much, Professor Marynovych. Carol Mosley, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Aris Mosley, hi. I'm from the Presbyterian Church of Wales, in the UK. I'm really glad to be able to be here. So my question is that one of the speakers mentioned Protestant theological education and the effect on students in the now occupied territories. And I'm wondering, do you think, given what's happened with Crimea, that Russia's law against extremism would be extended into Ukraine? And how soon and what? And how would that affect the education? Do you think that the Russian government could try to create a state-approved church like the Three Self Church in China? You'll be surprised to ask why I'm asking you that question. I'm sorry to sound self-interested, but our government in the United Kingdom, which has received a lot of Russian money, had tried a few years ago to pass an anti-extremism law, and it failed. There were so many of us that complained. But I'm interested in your situation and what we could do, or what you can tell us about it, how we can support.
Yes, thank you very much, Karis, and sorry for mispronouncing your name. Romane Soloviy, can you answer the question? What is expected?
Yes. Can you repeat the question, please?
So do you think that the areas that are now occupied by Russia in Ukraine, how do you think they will come under Russia's law against extremism? Because that affects religious freedom already.
Well, I don't think anybody can predict, what will happen at those territories. Russian politic toward religious minorities is not democratic, as you know, probably. And there are those expectations that those territories that would stay under Russian government, they will suffer from the same politic as, for instance, Jehovah's Witnesses and other denominations in Russia right now. And especially, they may share the very bitter history of Ukrainian evangelicals in so-called self-pronounced Donetsk and Lugansk people republics. But actually, evangelicals are totally forbidden because they didn't support the Russian world ideology in most cases, and they had more critical thinking, and they didn't support this occupation. Therefore, in Donetsk region, which is one of the largest Baptist region of Ukraine, there are no more Baptist registered churches. And many believers left, or they gather in underground, and they can be put into the prison just for prayer gathering in private house. The same is with Pentecostals. So if any more Ukrainian territories will fall under Russian government, we clearly can expect the same repressive politic toward evangelicals. And for instance, Ukrainian Orthodox Protestant Orthodox Church of Ukraine and Ukrainian Greek Catholic believers, who also are severely persecuted in Donetsk and Lugansk People Republic. So we may expect the same situation in those newly occupied territories, in my opinion.
I just would like to add that our Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church has this experience. In 1946, during the USSR time, our church was just united, so-called united with the Russian Orthodox Church. So, and it was persecuted for 50 years. So, no religious freedom in the new, if the Russia win.
Thank you very much to both Roman Soloviy and Fias. Marcus Grimm, please.
Hello, my name is Markus Grimm. I'm working for the Secretary of the German Catholic Bishops' Conference, and I have two questions. One is there anything that could change the mind of Patriarch Kirill, or is it hopeless to try to contact the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia? So maybe there's a chance of a resolution of our Orthodox Church or something like that that could change him, or no? And the other question is at all you speakers personally, will you be able to continue your service, your social service, and your duty as clergy, as priests during the next weeks, or will you have to do military service? And will there be a problem for the churches, or are you so don't you need to do the military service? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Who wants to answer that question?
I may answer the first question. Yes, I suggest that it probably is some sense to try to reach Patriarch Kirill. I do not believe that people may do something, but we know that where people are helpless, God is powerful. So we have to try, and God will decide what will be the result of that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Myroslav. On your second question, I'm not aware of any priests being asked to serve in the army. I was in touch with the seminary of Kyiv, Greek Catholic seminary, which has been evacuated to Lviv, and I was told that no student, no seminarian was called to serve. So I suppose for now, we don't expect that to happen. Who knows?
Yeah, if I may, I may add a bit, officially, according to Ukrainian legislation, priests are not excluded from mobilization, but because churches, all churches, are doing so much right now to help state, they do a lot of social work that gives state a possibility to use more resources for the war. I don't think that state would mobilize priests to the war right now, because churches' support is vital right now for keeping this balance, if I may call it so, of Ukrainian social life. All the social ministry of the churches is very important. So I think that army and state will pay attention to this.
Yes. Thank you very much. Father Igor, I think, is trying to join us, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, because when I'm driving, it's not so easy to listen and looking everywhere. But what I just want to stress that all the priests from the Greek Catholic Church, it doesn't matter right now in Boryspil or right now in Zaporizhia, where we have this atomic power station and the Russian Federation are bombing it. All the priests are still in the church and are praying all the circle, as you asked. Besides this, you ask about people that want to fight. Right now, it looks like a privilege to be in the army, because a lot of people want to go as a volunteer, and it is too much people right now that the army say, just stay a little bit, we will call you later. That's all.
Thank you very much, Father Igor. We are running out of time, so may I collect maybe 3 questions together by Daniel Gonzalez, Martin del Campo, and Vincent Agnes, and Father Milan Just. So please, Daniel.
Thank you very much. I belong to the Ruthenian mission here in Mexico. And my question is, what are the prospects for the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church? Remembering you have already talked a little bit about it, but there have been a lot of examples of the church resisting the Russification. For example, Andrei Sheptytsky, Romsha, and Karl resistance.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. As we say in Spanish, no pasarán. Vincent Anes.
I'm Vincent Anes from Rome. I'm a Catholic priest working for promotion of justice and peace. I'm closely following the events in Ukraine, and Ukraine had a lot of hope in NATO, but the way it has dealt with Budapest memorandum, and then the NATO countries playing safe, and in Security Council, Russia having veto power, and all these conditions, I feel very depressed. And I say with the psalmist, from where help can come from, come for Ukraine. And I pray. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your prayers and question. Father Milan.
Thank you very much. Greetings from Rome, Centro Aletti. I'm Milan Jost, a Jesuit, teaching at Gregorian University, and also consultor of Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. So we are all here praying for the peace and for the end of this war. And I'm in contact with some Russian Orthodox priests who are courageous and wrote together an appeal for the reconciliation and for the end of the war, also naming this a fratricidal war. And they really, they're about, I think, at this moment, 275 who agree with this, but probably many more. Some are in Russia, some are in different countries. So it's good to know that there, although maybe we don't know, but many Russian Orthodox, not only priests, but faithful that support the end of the war and the reconciliation. And they are suffering with all those who suffer in Ukraine. So we are with you, praying for you, for the peace, and thank you for this meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Padre Milan, for your prayers and support. So may I invite Alastair McIntosh for his question, and then Glenn, and that would be the last question. Maybe if we have time, we'll have a second turn of questions. So, Alastair McIntosh, then Glenn, please. Glenn, can you introduce yourself and maybe switch on your camera?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I represent Assumption University, a Catholic university here in the Kingdom of Thailand. And I also am a consultant to the Pontifical Council for Culture. I just would like to express our solidarity with all the churches in Ukraine for the deep suffering that you encounter, along with the people and your president, President Volodymyr Zelensky. At the same time, we do have one Ukrainian student with us. I've reached out to her as the director of the Office of International Affairs, and we will take care of her. Okay, that would be our solidarity statement for you. And we continue to pray for you from the Church of Thailand and also from Assumption University of Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your prayers and solidarity from so far as Thailand. Thank you. Yes. Can I ask the technical staff to unmute Alastair McIntosh and Rose, if you can wait a second, because we have many questions. So maybe we start answering those. And
Yes, I'm Alistair McIntosh, a Quaker from Scotland, also with a message from Shawnee Macaulay, a boat builder and elder in the Church of Scotland on the Isle of Harris, who said this morning, I pray that the Venerable St. Andrew should retrace his footsteps through the Ukraine, referring to how St. Andrew's Church in Kiev was reputedly established by St. Andrew. St. Andrew was martyred because of his pacifism, converting the wife of the Roman proconsul Agiates and persuading soldiers to lay down their weapons. My question is, are there things that can be learned here from the peaceful revolution in East Germany in 1989, when the churches, and especially I believe the Evangelical Lutheran Church, played a major role in empowering ordinary people to take a stand for peace and turn back the tides of war?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Now, I would add to those questions some questions from the chat, which I think are important. The question about the question whether Russian people are being attacked in Ukraine, the question about the instances of racism, about Azov battalion, which are, I don't know, somehow, yes, challenging this moral heights on through which Ukraine tries to speak. And I think they are also things that need to be addressed by Christians. And maybe, I don't know, Rose, if you can just 30 seconds voice a question, and because we won't have time for the second tour.
Thank you very much. It follows on some of the questions that have been raised. Do you see examples of organized, unarmed civilian defense active now in Ukraine? How was that organized? Did it draw on the organizing from previous people's movements in Ukraine or in other places in Europe? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rose. So I invite our speakers, maybe 1 minute each, to tackle the questions you feel comfortable and competent responding. Yes, and we probably won't have time for any questions anymore. Thank you.
Let me try to answer the question about peaceful role of churches in 1989. It was this very clear situation. There was no war at that time. And I may compare the situation in 1989 with the year 1991 in Ukraine, when the Soviet Union was dissolved. Then the role of Christian message of peace expressed by churches was very important. And all Ukrainians were full of positive emotions. I remember those feelings that from time now on, we will live in a better world. We will live in a more wise world. We will live in the world of values. So at that point, this message of peace was very important and effective. Now, the message of peace for Ukraine, for Ukrainians, sometimes means to subdue, to surrender. But it's not I'm totally convinced that this is not a Christian message, because otherwise the evil will prevail. So that's my at least attempt to answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Marynovych. I wonder whether we can follow the list of our speakers. Yes, Professor Marynovych started, whether Father Petro, Balog, then Bortnyk, then Dzyubanskyy, Soloviy, Shvarts, Shaban can speak. So we'll have a little bit of order. I've seen Father Petro was answering already in the chat to some direct questions. Yes, unfortunately, there are very many questions in the chat that we didn't manage to tackle. But Oče Petre, if not, Sergii.
So I can say some words. According to the information I have seen, there are many situations that people, unarmed people, come to the soldiers of the Russian army and express that these were not invited in Ukraine. So the problem is that, according to the propaganda, many people that speak Russian in Ukraine, for example, were ready to invite these Russian soldiers, should have should be happy to see these changes. But if they see, it is not the fact. So simple people that were involved in the conflict, so soldiers, but not really generals of this war, have seen it is a problem that what was said in Russia, according to the propaganda, and what we see now in Ukraine are two different situations. That's why maybe they have the idea that it is false position of our state, and this is a possibility to show for simple people that came to Ukraine to bring peace, to bring good prosperity and so on, that this is false understanding of the situation. This is possible, and I have seen different situations that it was made. So many, for example, I don't know, 100 people, 100 Ukrainian people came to the tanks, to these large machines of Russians, and have said, you are not invited here. We have not welcomed you here. And it was, I have heard, for example, in Sumy region, there was a kind of cooperation between these peaceful people and Russian soldiers. There is no conflict. The Russians should go away. And so the problem is, as a whole, as soon as I understand, many Russian soldiers are not motivated. They don't. They are not really ready to camp to be active in this war. And if they say the real situation is other, as it was have said, they can change their mind first of all, and after that maybe there will be changes also as a whole in this war. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Sergii. Taras Dzyubanskyy and then Roman Soloviy. I ask you to be extremely brief.
Petro Balog is also online. Petro Balog is also online.
Taras.
Yeah, there was some question about the racism, the instances of racism. You know, we have a lot of international students in Ukraine, especially a lot of students from Africa and students from India. I know personally that some of them actually joined the Ukrainian forces, you know, to defend Ukraine. There might have been some instances, you know, when men were not sort of allowed on the trains to leave Ukrainian border or the buses, where prerogatives were given to women or children. You know, this is normal thing in a situation of, you know, chaos. But, you know, the media would like to pick that up. And sometimes what I see in the Western media is this narrative of saying who is more victim. You know, is it like the victims, the Ukrainian refugees, or the victims from the previous refugee crisis? You know, this question makes no sense. In the war, everybody is a victim. So it's really important not to fall into this trap of mainstream media. And also another thing about the spirituality and the role of religious organizations and churches. I think it's really fundamental because what we see in Ukraine, yes, we see a lot of anxiety, but we don't see people panicking. We don't see this panic. And I think this calmness is sort of also the result of the work of churches and religious organizations. Even, you know, a lot of people have still sense of humor. So we see a lot of memes as well on the internet. And I think this is really the grace of God working. So shortly, my comments.
Thank you very much, Taras. Roman Soloviy, and then Father Balog, if he wishes.
Yeah, very briefly, I would say that that's naive to expect from Russian Orthodox Church to become a part of movement toward peace. Well, let's be objective. For many years, it's a part of Russian political structure of Putin's regime. It is not independent church. There is nothing independent in the Russian Federation right now. It's all controlled by the state and by the KGB. So I don't think that there is something that can be done and really change the situation right now. And so this is my estimation that it's in vain to expect for some big moves from Russian Orthodox Church in this situation. I don't think it will happen.
Thank you very much, Roman. Father Balog, Father Shaban, Bishop Shvarts, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I received one question about will the Ukrainians accept the occupation? Never Ukrainians accept the occupation. And so I believe that this war will end in 1-2 months, I don't know, or faster. And it will be also end of Putin's regime. I personally, I believe that it is, so this year we will see, I hope, the victory of Ukrainians. I believe in God and I believe in Ukrainians now, and it will be end of Putin. So we will see another Russia this year. It's my credo. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Father Petro. So what I suggest we do now, we end formally our webinar with a prayer for the peace in Ukraine, for people who are defending Ukraine, for our enemies, and we stop then recording, we stop broadcasting, and if some of the speakers have time to tackle the other questions in the chat, you are welcome to remain and answer the questions. Okay, so I don't know, Father Roman, can you lead us with the prayer of our Father in English so everybody can join, and then we stop formal part. Father Roman.
Almighty God, thank you for this evening and for such many people who gathered and who are in solidarity with Ukrainian people. Bless those who are suffering, bless those who defend their homeland, and lead us to the victory of the light, and to the truth. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Yes. So I'm grateful to all our speakers. I'm grateful for Roman. He has to bring them together, to Irene Kitura and my staff at the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. And I'm very grateful to Libertas Center, IFCU, and Lov Dorian for supporting it. Thank you for your prayers, and if somebody wants to remain in informal conversation, please do so. I will ask technical staff to stop recording and to stop broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube. And personally, I am very grateful to all of you. I must leave now for another meeting.
Recording stopped.
Thank you very much.